Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. A door slammed upstairs, followed by the sound of laughter and footsteps. Dave's sister, Tara, bounded down the stairs, her friends in tow. Hey, little bro, still moping around. Tara ruffled Dave's hair as she passed. Dave swatted her hand away. I'm not moping, just thinking. Well, think about this instead. Tara plopped down next to him, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Halloween's coming up. Got any costume ideas? Dave shrugged. Not really. Might not even go out. Tara exchanged glances with her friends. Oh no, that won't do at all. We can't have you sitting at home while everyone else is having fun. What if... One of Tara's friends, a petite brunette named Emma, piped up. What if we gave you a makeover? You could go as a girl. Dave's eyes widened. What? No way. But Tara was already nodding enthusiastically. Oh my God, yes. Dave, you'd make such a cute girl. We could totally pull it off. Before Dave could protest further, he found himself surrounded by Tara and her friends, their excited chatter drowning out his objections. I've got the perfect wig, Emma declared. Ooh, and I have that blue dress that doesn't fit me anymore, another friend chimed in. Dave's head spun as the girls planned his transformation. Despite his initial reluctance, a tiny spark of curiosity ignited within him. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of preparation. Dave found himself swept up in the excitement, trying on outfits and practicing walking in heels. Tara and her friends were relentless in their enthusiasm, teaching him about makeup and helping him perfect a feminine voice. On Halloween night, Dave stood in front of the mirror, barely recognizing himself. The blue dress hugged her, padded in all the right places. Long, honey blonde hair cascaded over his shoulders, framing a face that had been expertly made up to enhance his natural features. Wow, Tara breathed, standing behind him. You look amazing, Dave. Or should I say Melissa? Dave, now Melissa, blushed, a strange flutter in her stomach. Thanks. I kind of like it. The party was a blur of music, laughter, and compliments. Melissa found herself enjoying the attention, reveling in the freedom of her new persona. As the night wore on, she caught herself thinking that she didn't want it to end. Weeks passed, and Melissa became more than just a Halloween costume. Dave found himself looking forward to the weekends when he could transform into Melissa, spending time with Tara and her friends, shopping and going to cafes. Slowly, Melissa's life became more structured. Mondays were for therapy sessions with a gender specialist. Wednesdays were dedicated to voice training. Fridays were for shopping and pampering with Tara and the girls. As the months went by, Dave spent less and less time as himself. Melissa's wardrobe grew, taking over his closet. His room transformed, posters of cars and bands replaced by fashion magazines and makeup tutorials. 1 year after that fateful Halloween night, Melissa stood in front of her vanity, applying the finishing touches to her makeup. She smoothed down her favorite red dress, admiring how it accentuated her curves. Real curves now, thanks to hormone therapy. A honk outside caught her attention. She grabbed her purse and headed out, sliding into the passenger seat of a sleek black car. Hey, beautiful. The driver, a handsome man in his late 20s, greeted her. Hey, yourself, Mark, Melissa replied, her heart fluttering. As they drove to their dinner reservation, Melissa reflected on the whirlwind of the past year. From uncertain high school graduate to successful model, part-time waitress, and weekend dancer at the local club. And now in a loving relationship with a man who adored her. Life as Melissa was everything Dave had never known he wanted. As they pulled up to the restaurant, Melissa smiled to herself. This was who she was meant to be all along. The maitre d' greeted them warmly as they entered the upscale Italian restaurant. Good evening, Mr. Harrison, Miss Davis. Your table is ready. Mark placed his hand on the small of Melissa's back, guiding her through the dimly lit dining room. The soft clink of cutlery and murmur of conversation created an intimate atmosphere. As they settled into their seats, Melissa couldn't help but marvel at how far she'd come. A year ago, she would have been too self-conscious to set foot in a place like this. Now she felt perfectly at ease, her posture graceful and confident. "You look stunning tonight," Mark said, his eyes twinkling in the candlelight. "That dress is absolutely killer on you." Melissa blushed, smoothing the fabric of her dress. "Thank you. I still can't believe sometimes that this is my life now." Mark reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "Well, believe it. You deserve every bit of happiness, Melissa." As they perused the menu, Melissa's mind wandered back to the early days of her transition, the fear and uncertainty that had plagued her, the doubts that whispered in the dark corners of her mind. But with each passing day, those doubts had faded, replaced by an ever-growing sense of rightness. Their waiter approached, a bottle of wine in hand. "Good evening. May I interest you in our house red? It pairs beautifully with our pasta dishes." Mark glanced at Melissa, who nodded. "That sounds perfect, thank you." As the waiter poured their wine, Melissa's phone buzzed. She glanced at it discreetly, seeing a text from Tara. "Everything okay?" Mark asked as the waiter left. Melissa smiled. "Just Tara wishing us a good evening. She's still my biggest cheerleader, you know?" Mark raised his glass. "To Tara, then, and to new beginnings." They clinked glasses, the rich red wine complementing the intimate mood. As they sipped, Melissa found herself lost in thought, remembering the journey that had led her here. The first few months had been the hardest. Learning to navigate the world as a woman, dealing with the occasional confused looks or whispered comments. But Tara had been there every step of the way, along with her friends who had become Melissa's support system. "Penny for your thoughts." Mark's voice pulled her back to the present. Melissa set down her glass. "Just thinking about how much has changed. A year ago, I was lost, unsure of my place in the world, and now... And now you're a successful model, turning heads wherever you go." Mark finished with a grin. Melissa laughed. "Well, I don't know about turning heads, but I do feel more comfortable in my skin than I ever have before." Their food arrived, steaming plates of homemade pasta that smelled divine. As they ate, the conversation flowed easily, touching on their respective days and plans for the weekend. "Oh, before I forget," Mark said between bites, "my company's having its annual gala next month. I was hoping you'd be my date." Melissa's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "A gala? That sounds intimidating." Mark reached across the table, squeezing her hand reassuringly. "You'll be amazing, I promise. Besides, I need someone to save me from boring shop talk all night." Melissa chuckled, some of her nervousness easing. "Well, when you put it that way, how can I refuse?" As they finished their meal, Melissa found herself filled with a warm contentment. This life, so different from what she had imagined for herself a year ago, felt right in a way she couldn't quite explain. They declined dessert, both pleasantly full from the rich Italian fare. As Mark signaled for the check, Melissa excused herself to the restroom. Standing in front of the mirror, she touched up her lipstick, studying her reflection. The face that looked back at her was undeniably feminine, with soft features and long lashes. But more than that, it was a face filled with happiness and self-assurance. As she rejoined Mark, he helped her into her coat, his touch gentle and familiar. They stepped out into the cool night air, the city alive with lights and the distant hum of traffic. "What do you say we take a walk?" Mark suggested. "It's such a beautiful night." Melissa nodded, linking her arm through his. They strolled down the sidewalk, the click of Melissa's heels a steady rhythm against the concrete. "You know," Mark said after a while, "I've been meaning to ask you something." Melissa looked up at him, curiosity piqued. "Oh, what's that?" Mark stopped, turning to face her. His expression was serious, but his eyes were warm. "We've been together for 6 months now, and they've been the happiest 6 months of my life. I was wondering, how would you feel about moving in together?" Melissa's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't expected this. Not tonight. But as she looked into Mark's eyes, she felt a surge of warmth and certainty. "I'd love to," she said, her voice soft but sure. "You've made me the happiest man alive," Mark said, his forehead resting against hers. As they continued their walk, now with a new spring in their step, Melissa marveled at how far she'd come, from a confused young man to a confident woman, in love and building a future. The next morning, Melissa woke to the soft ping of her phone. Stretching languidly, she reached for it, smiling as she saw a text from Tara. "Brunch at Rosie's? The girls are dying to hear about your date." Melissa typed back a quick affirmative, then slipped out of bed. She had a few hours before meeting the girls, just enough time for her morning routine. In the bathroom, she went through the familiar motions of her skincare regimen, applying toner, serum, and moisturizer with practiced ease. As she began her makeup, she thought about how much her life had changed in just 1 year. Gone were the days of uncertainty and self-doubt. In their place was a woman who knew exactly who she was and what she wanted. Melissa smiled at her reflection, applying a swipe of mascara to her lashes. An hour later, she was walking into Rosie's, a quaint cafe that had become their regular brunch spot. Tara waved from a corner booth, already surrounded by their friends. "There she is," Emma called out as Melissa approached. "Spill the details, girl. How was the date?" Melissa slid into the booth, grinning. "It was wonderful, and Mark asked me to move in with him." The table erupted in excited squeals and congratulations. Tara pulled her into a tight hug. "Oh my God, Mel, that's amazing!" As they settled down and ordered their food, Melissa found herself recounting the evening in detail, from the romantic dinner to the moonlit walk. "I'm so happy for you," Tara said, squeezing Melissa's hand. "You deserve all of this and more." The conversation flowed easily, touching on everything from Melissa's modeling gigs to Emma's new job. As they ate their brunch, avocado toast for Melissa, waffles for Tara, Melissa felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. These women had been there from the very beginning, supporting her through every step of her journey. From that first Halloween transformation to helping her navigate the complexities of living as a woman full-time, they had been her rock. "Oh, by the way," Emma piped up, "the club's having a special ladies' night next weekend. You in, Mel?" Melissa hesitated for a moment. Her weekends at the club, where she danced part-time, were always fun but exhausting. "I'm not sure. I've got a photo shoot on Friday, and with the move coming up..." "Come on," Tara nudged her. "It'll be fun. Besides, you're the star attraction. The place isn't the same without you." Melissa laughed, relenting. All right, count me in." As they finished up their brunch, making plans for the upcoming week, Melissa couldn't help but reflect on how different her life was now compared to a year ago. Back then, she had been Dave, lost, unsure, and struggling to find his place in the world. Now, as Melissa, she had a career she loved, friends who supported her unconditionally, and a partner who adored her. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been moments of doubt, of fear, of wondering if she was making the right choice. But sitting here surrounded by laughter and love, Melissa knew without a doubt that this was who she was meant to be. As they left the cafe, hugging goodbye and promising to meet up soon, Melissa felt a sense of peace settle over her. She had found her place in the world, and it was beautiful. Walking home, the sun warm on her face, Melissa pulled out her phone and dialed Mark's number. His voice, warm and familiar, answered on the second ring. "Hey, beautiful. How was brunch?" Melissa smiled, her heart full. "It was great. Listen, I was thinking, why don't we start looking at apartments this week?" She could hear the smile in Mark's voice as he replied, "I'd love that. How about Tuesday after work?" As they chatted, making plans for their future together, Melissa felt a surge of excitement. This was just the beginning of a new chapter in her life, and she couldn't wait to see what it would bring. The following Friday found Melissa in a bustling photo studio, the air filled with the rapid-fire clicks of camera shutters and the low hum of studio lights. She stood in front of a stark white backdrop, her body curved into a graceful pose as the photographer called out directions. "That's it, Melissa. Now turn slightly to your left. Perfect. Hold that pose." Melissa complied, her movements fluid and natural. The deep purple gown she wore shimmered under the lights, its intricate beadwork catching and reflecting the flashes. As she moved through a series of poses, Melissa marveled at how comfortable she felt in front of the camera. A year ago, the thought of being the center of attention would have terrified her. Now, she thrived on it. "All right, let's take 5, the photographer called out. "Melissa, you're doing great. We'll change the backdrop for the next set." Melissa relaxed her pose, rolling her shoulders to ease the tension. A makeup artist hurried over, touching up her lipstick and smoothing a few stray hairs. "You're killing it out there," Emma's voice came from behind her. Melissa turned to see her friend, who worked as a stylist's assistant, approaching with a bottle of water. "Thanks," Melissa said, gratefully accepting the water. "I still can't believe sometimes that this is my job." Emma grinned. "Believe it, girl. You were born for this." As they chatted, Melissa's phone buzzed with a text from Mark. "Good luck with the shoot, beautiful. Can't wait to see you tonight." Melissa smiled, quickly typing back a response before being called back to set. The rest of the shoot flew by in a blur of outfit changes, different poses, and the constant flash of cameras. By the time it wrapped up, the sun was setting, painting the sky in vibrant oranges and pinks. Melissa changed back into her street clothes, a comfortable floral sundress and sandals, and said her goodbyes to the crew. "Great work today, Melissa," the photographer said as she was leaving. "The client's going to love these shots." Melissa beamed, the compliment warming her. "Thanks, John. It was a pleasure working with you." As she stepped out onto the street, the warm evening air enveloped her. She had a few hours before meeting Mark for dinner, just enough time to go home and freshen up. The subway ride home was uneventful, the car filled with the usual mix of commuters heading home for the weekend. Melissa caught a few admiring glances, but she was used to it by now. She focused on her phone, scrolling through her social media feed and responding to comments on her latest post. Back at her apartment, Melissa kicked off her sandals with a sigh of relief. As much as she loved fashion, there was something to be said for being barefoot at home. She moved through her evening routine with practiced ease, a quick shower to wash away the day's makeup, then carefully applying a fresh face for her dinner date. She chose a sleek black dress from her closet, pairing it with strappy heels and delicate silver jewelry. As she was putting the finishing touches on her look, her phone rang. Tara's face flashed on the screen. "Hey, sis," Melissa answered, tucking the phone between her ear and shoulder as she fastened an earring. "Hey, Mel, just wanted to check in before your big date." "You excited?" Melissa smiled. Even after all this time, Tara still checked in before important events, a holdover from the early days of Melissa's transition, when everything had felt new and scary. "Definitely excited," Melissa replied. "Mark's being very mysterious about where we're going." They chatted for a few more minutes before Melissa had to go. As she hung up, she felt a rush of affection for her sister. Tara had been her biggest supporter from day one, and Melissa knew she wouldn't be where she was today without her. A knock at the door signaled Mark's arrival. Melissa gave herself one last look in the mirror, took a deep breath, and went to greet her boyfriend. Mark's face lit up as she opened the door. "Wow," he breathed. "You look incredible." Melissa felt a blush creep up her cheeks. Even after 6 months together, Mark still had the ability to make her feel like the most beautiful woman in the world. "You clean up pretty well yourself," she teased, taking in his sharp suit. Mark offered his arm with a grin. "Shall we, my lady?" As they made their way to Mark's car, Melissa felt a flutter of anticipation. Whatever the night held, she was ready to face it head-on, with the man she loved by her side. The restaurant Mark had chosen was a hidden gem, tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. As they were led to their table, Melissa took in the intimate atmosphere, soft lighting, the gentle strains of a live jazz band, and the murmur of quiet conversation. "This place is beautiful," Melissa said as they settled into their seats. Mark smiled, reaching across the table to take her hand. "I'm glad you like it. I wanted tonight to be special." There was something in his tone that made Melissa's heart skip a beat. Before she could dwell on it, their waiter appeared with menus and a wine list. As they perused the options, making their selections, Melissa found herself stealing glances at Mark. He seemed slightly nervous, his fingers tapping lightly on the tablecloth. "Is everything okay?" she asked after the waiter had taken their order. Mark looked up, his eyes softening as they met hers. "Everything's perfect. I have something I want to talk to you about." Melissa felt a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "Oh, what is it?" Mark took a deep breath, then reached into his pocket. Melissa's breath caught as he pulled out a small velvet box. "Melissa," he began, his voice filled with emotion, "this past year with you has been the happiest of my life. You're beautiful, kind, strong. Everything I've ever wanted in a partner. I can't imagine my life without you." He opened the box, revealing a stunning diamond ring. "Will you marry me?" Melissa felt tears welling up in her eyes. This moment, one she had dreamed about but never truly believed would happen, was here. And it felt more right than she could have ever imagined. "Yes," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, of course, I'll marry you." The restaurant erupted in applause as Mark slipped the ring onto her finger. He stood, pulling her into a deep kiss, heedless of their audience. As they broke apart, both laughing and crying, Melissa felt as if her heart might burst with happiness. This was everything she had ever wanted, everything she had fought so hard for. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur of champagne toasts and excited phone calls to friends and family. Tara's squeal of delight when Melissa broke the news nearly deafened her. As they left the restaurant, hand in hand, Melissa couldn't stop staring at the ring on her finger. It sparkled in the streetlights, a tangible symbol of the love and acceptance she had found. "So," Mark said as they walked, his arm around her waist. "Any thoughts on the wedding? Spring? Summer?" Melissa laughed, leaning into him. "Let's enjoy being engaged for a while first. We've got all the time in the world." Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other socials if you want more wonderful content, early access, behind the scenes, and more. All links